I'm Robert Timmons, and you're watching Weekly Words. What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Weekly Words. I pray that these last weeks have been magnificent for you. And if you missed last week's episode, be sure to check it out because we had a special guest, Austin Burnett, on there, so you don't want to miss it. I'm excited for this week's episode because I'll be paralleling some truths and lessons from the Bible with a popular Disney movie. And I think it's so interesting to see how the Word of God and themes of the Bible can spill over into our culture and our entertainment. So let's go ahead and get started. So if we go to 1 Samuel chapter 24, we will meet David where he is running and fearing for his life. So at this point in the story, he has already been anointed king by Samuel, but King Saul actually sits on the throne. And King Saul is jealous of David, so he's trying to have him killed. So while David is running and fleeing from the king, he hides in a cave towards the very back. Now, by God's design, King Saul ends up in this very same cave to rest while he's searching for David, but he is completely unaware of David's presence. So as King Saul is resting, David's men try to egg him on to kill King Saul because this is now David's chance to take the throne. And David considers it for a second. What he ends up doing is cutting off a piece of King Saul's robe, but he doesn't move forward with anything else because he has the revelation that even though King Saul is trying to kill him, King Saul is still God's chosen one, and he is not meant to harm what God has chosen, right? So as you can see, for a moment, David forgot who he was. He forgot that even though he didn't have the title of king in man's eyes, he was still a king. So, and when you're royalty, you act, think, and walk differently. So I want to encourage people from this story that if you're someone whose current circumstance doesn't match the promise that God has given you, don't forget who you are. You were made with a purpose and you are an heir to the throne. So act like it. In a similar light, let's look at the popular Disney movie, The Lion King. So, like you all probably know, after the death of his father Mufasa, Simba runs into the wilderness where he befriends Timon and Pumbaa, and he starts to live off of bugs. Bugs! Think about how ridiculous that sounds. A lion living off of bugs. But he was running from his destiny and his calling because of his mistakes, his shortcomings, his failures, and his lack of belief in himself. It wasn't until Nala, Rafiki, and his father Mufasa encouraged him to be the king that he was destined to be that he went back to claim his throne, right? But Simba, before he did that, was settling for less. And I think lots of times we settle too. We settle in our goals, we settle in our relationships, we settle in our finances, not obtaining the fullness of what God has for us. So from this story, I want to encourage everybody to not settle for less, to be encouraged to know that God has more for us, that we just need to remember who we are and walk accordingly. So to put a bow on everything, David and Simba both forgot who they were at some point, right? David allowed his current circumstance to make him doubt the promise that God had given him for his life. And Simba allowed his past mistakes, failures, and shortcomings to deter him from his destiny. So whether you feel like your circumstance doesn't match God's promise to you, or you feel like you're running from your past mistakes, don't forget who you are. You have a purpose. God has a plan for you, and your life has value. And all of that starts in your mind. So I'm encouraging you today to remember who you are. Thank you for checking out this week's episode of Weekly Words. I pray that you thoroughly enjoyed it and got something positive from it. If you have any questions or suggestions or things for me to speak on in the future, feel free to email me at weeklywordsrt@gmail.com. Again, that's weeklywordsrt@gmail.com. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you back here next time for our next episode on May the 29th.